If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank Latirzo and Jack Hirsch. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank Latirzo and Jack Hirsch.
And we're back. Welcome to Glove Fist. My name is Frank Latirzo, former writer, almost full-time observer, joined by former 6-term president of the BWAA, Jack Hirsch. And I'd like to say before we get started, I'd like to wish Jack a happy new year, or I should say happy Hanukkah. Brian, Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays to everyone out there.
Well, that covers it, Jack, but I'm a Merry Christmas type guy, but I know you celebrate Hanukkah, so I'm going to say that, right? You celebrate Hanukkah, right?
Well, let's get into the boxing part of it, Frank. The football, as you'd like to, say it. I mean, we got to hit the ground running with this show.
All right, first of all, football, I'm going to take a bow. The Dolphins are who I said they were. Their quarterback, they missed never start Tua again. And I still like the Eagles to come out of the NFC.
Okay, yeah, that's a viable opinion. They've played well the last couple of weeks.
Okay. Go ahead, Jack. Talk about that big fight that there was Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, what else are we going to lead off with? Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua. And I basically told you it was going to go a few rounds. I mean, it legitimately went a few rounds. Josh,
but you didn't tell me that Jake Paul was going to run like Carl Lewis.
Oh, no, we knew he was going to move. How else was he going to fight him, Frank?
Is that moving, Jack, or was that running?
How else was he going to fight him? Okay? He was going to move around the ring the whole time.
Which proved that the fight was a fugazi.
No, it gave him his only chance. Whenever you have a massive underdog against a prohibitive favorite, there's always a tiny crack in the door to give the underdog a chance, as tiny as it is. Call it like his lottery chance or whatever you want to say. For Jake Paul to pull off the upset of upsets, he was going to have to move away from Joshua and catch him with a big right hand at some point, surprise him. Have Joshua get a little careless, lull him in kind of. And we've seen Joshua get hurt before. It wasn't
by real fighters, Jack.
But Jake Paul is a real fighter at this point.
Not a real fighter at that level. Not a real fighter at that level.
Not a real fight at that level. But Jake Paul, if you want to compare him to a regular professional level, he's a competent, not world-class, not rated, but a competent cruiserweight, okay? And you know what this fight kind of reminded me of going in, and maybe I didn't say it to you, a fight that you're very familiar with, Joe Frazier and Terry Daniels. Daniels wouldn't have a chance against, a peak Joe Frazier. It would be a mismatch. Frazier would knock him out in one round probably. And that's what this kind of reminded me of going in.
Terry Daniels was at least ranked 10th, and he had 20-some fights going in, and I think he only had one loss. He was a much more competent fighter. Jack, come on. That thing was a joke. It was a ripoff. No, we didn't have to pay for it. Wait a second. It was a ripoff, and the fact that we have to make an excuse, well, he's not good enough, so he has to run. Well, how's that a fight? They gave him a football field, a 22-foot ring. It was a joke, and it's a disgrace, and it makes boxing look bad. And friends of mine who aren't even big boxing fans are texting me the next day because I didn't even know the result, and they're saying, Frank, it's not a good look for boxing. It's a circus.
Not a good look for boxing. Think of everything that goes on with boxing. Boxing's a farce as it is. All the legitimate world champions get stripped of their titles. That's worse than this fight. You don't think it's worse a sanctioning body forcing a champion to fight a mandatory against a guy who's clearly not deserving? You think that's you think that Jake Paul,
Jack,
Anthony Joshua
I'm not
fight is
saying it's a
worse
high
than
bar.
that?
I'm just saying that they all but told us that that's it. We knew going in. It's a joke, okay? We knew Caveman Lee couldn't last at Marvin Hagler, but Caveman Lee was at least a real fighter, just on different levels. But they're both fighters. Jake
They weren't
Paul
fighting for
should not be
titles.
fighting a former gold medalist and Olympic heavyweight champion, even though he shot and he could never be a factor again. And he showed
But
that he
that's
can't cut
it.
off the ring.
That's
Jack,
it. And but at the end of the day, in a way, Paul showed he belonged. In a way, okay, it's easy to say, but he lasted into the 6th round. I mean, think of it. Let me throw this to you. Could you imagine Canelo Alvarez wanted to take a monster challenge and take on Anthony Joshua? I'm not sure he lasts as long as Jake Paul does. He would fight differently. He would take it to Joshua, I'm sure. But maybe he would move away, and try to buy time. Give Jake Paul credit. He lasted into the 6th round. You might say he ran like a bandit, but he had to keep away from Joshua. And Joshua was trying to cut the ring off, wasn't doing it particularly effective.
no, you think?
He frustrated Joshua at times, made a miss. Joshua wasn't sharp. Let's be honest, Joshua was coming up a stoppage loss and hadn't fought in 15 months. So wasn't the best of Anthony Joshua, but Joshua was in shape. He was
Jack,
a really good
what other than Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua both making about $90 million, what good came from that fight? I can't find it at all.
We're talking about it. It's entertainment. The idea that we're talking about it. And that's what people are doing on sports shows. They're talking about it. It's newsworthy. I mean,
Jack, if the Ben Franklin bridge crashes tonight, we're going to talk about that too. What good is it? You talk about these sanctioning bodies, and I agree, and we get some bad fights. But the point is, this was a unforced error. Jake Paul is a joke. He's a decent boxer, but what he's doing, he's just making a mockery of the sport. And I don't see, other than he gets people talking about boxing somewhat, but do we need that kind of talk? I don't see anything to it at all. And I understand he got his jaw broken so bad that he may not be able to box again. I don't know if that's true or not, but I have seen that. I don't wish that on him, but he didn't belong with that guy.
It's entertainment. Lighten up. Jake Paul can fight again, and I'll tell you, and do big numbers. All he has to do is sign to fight Ryan Garcia. And now the excuse is losing to Joshua, and it's partly legitimate, even though Joshua beat him on skill more than anything, but size did play a big role. They're claiming Jake Paul's side. The reason he got beaten was because of size. He fought a much bigger guy. So Jake Paul's going to announce, I'm not going to fight a heavyweight again. I took a chance. I dared be great. I went into the 6th round. He's going to look at a little guy like Ryan Garcia. And because of the personality, that's going to do really good business.
Jack, you have many more words to say on this. I think it's boring. I think it's sad that we're talking about it. And I have no use for Jake Paul. And the fact that Anthony Joshua looked as inept as he did, he'll lose to Fury. Like Joe Bergman said, he'll lose to Fury. Fury could roll out of bed and beat Joshua. I can't believe how wrong I was on him, because after he beat Vladimir Klitschko, I actually thought he had a chance to be a fighter that we might remember for a little bit and be a poor man's Lennox Lewis. And he's nowhere near the case.
Yeah, I would think that Fury would beat Joshua. That would be my initial pick. But keep this in mind, Fury's a big man. He carries a lot of weight, and there's a lot of inactivity, and he's in his late 30s. I mean, and Joshua is the bigger puncher between the two. Joshua could still hit.
He won't land him, Jack. Fury will just tie him up and push him off and move. And on the couple rounds he could move. I have no time for Anthony Joshua either.
But Deontay Wilder was able to break through against Fury. So you can't discount Joshua's
Jack, how many years ago was that? That was Wilder of 2018.
But this is an older Fury. And I could argue
I'm
he'll
not
be
saying
more
he's going to beat
difficult.
Joshua up and knock him out. I just think it's going to be a terrible fight and knock him out. I just think it's going to be a terrible fight, and he'll do just enough where they'll have to give him this decision.
But it'll be a massive fight, especially in the UK. It'll be off the rails in the UK. They'll put it in the biggest possible stadium. They'll sell out. It'll create a big buzz in the boxing world. One of the sanctioning bodies is going to strip whoever and make it into a title bout. I have mixed feelings, Frank, with Turkey, His Excellency and Dana White looking to get rid of the sanctioning bodies and do their own thing. And one end, the sanctioning bodies do some good things, but at the other end, they harm the sport. I mean, where they really harm the sport. So I would favor just one champion like everyone else, and that's it. I don't want to hear the word undisputed again. It makes a mockery of the sport. Now Frank Warren is going around because he promotes Fabio Wardley. Oh, well, we have the heavyweight champion of the world in Fabio Wardley, which is a joke. I mean, you hear that said, you just laugh about it. If it wasn't so sad.
Jack, my father, rest his soul, I don't think he went past 7th grade. And he wasn't the most worldly person around that you would meet. He wasn't even he didn't have that much on the ball, but every once in a while he would say a few things, and it's just, and I'm talking about intellectually. He was a great person, but I'm talking, intellectually. And he said, and I think he told me this maybe when I was 8 or 10, and I was so enthralled with Muhammad Ali. And he said, son, he goes, sports is all about money. And you just said you would like to see one champion. Well, we did have that for a long time, Jack. And then somebody came along and they realized if we break these bodies up and we have 3 or 4 guys that can go around and say they're the world champion, then we get 4 title fights instead of 1. The fans will go for it. And it's like, it's all about money. That's my point. That's a long way of saying what I just said. It's all about money. Sports is all about money. And you can predict what's going to happen based on what just happened. Jake Paul, to me, didn't do anything. And I agree with you. The next time he announces his fight, whether he's fighting a female with one arm or he's fighting LeBron James, it'll go over and people will talk about it. It's all about money. Unmute yourself.
You just put the idea in my head, Frank.
That's scary.
Against Clarissa Shields.
Will we have to talk about that?
No, not at all. I wouldn't want to see that. But look, I said it would go 4 or 5 rounds. It went 6, so that's in the ballpark. So I'm not shocked or surprised. And the reason I said it would go a few rounds is because Jake Paul is competent. He's not world class or anywhere close to it, but he's a legitimate boxer at this point. Stop referring to him as a YouTube guy. He's been in the gym for years. He's been going at it so far, like, a good 6 years. He's been sticking with this. He didn't have an amateur background. His ceiling is limited. He's not that bad of a fighter. He's not, he's not good enough to be rated. But let's say as a cruiserweight, if I said I think Jake Paul is top 50, 5-0, perhaps.
Perhaps.
And a cruiserweight who fights to survive, a semi-competent cruiserweight can last some rounds against Joshua if they run around the ring. Look what Ray Anderson did with Bob Foster. He ran for the full 15 rounds. Jake did the same exact thing. You know what disappointed me with Jake Paul more than anything else? He said he needed more cardio. What the heck are you talking about?
With the track meet.
Yeah, but why didn't he actually train on the track? Hire someone like Mackie Shilstone. Have him do 400 meters, 800 meters with a minute rest in between. Be ready to run the whole fight. Because I'm going to tell you, had Jake Paul's legs lasted, it's interesting to see whether Joshua would have actually had to maybe even settle for a decision because it was only an
Oh,
eight-round
Jack,
fight.
come
No, no, no,
on,
no, no. It
Jack,
was an
come
Frank,
on.
it was an 8-round fight. Paul, in
Which
a
proves it
way,
wasn't really a fight. Exactly. That was my point. It was 8 rounds in a 22-foot ring. Everything was curtailed to make it a show, as Joe said. That's what it was. You talk about entertainment, Jack. You know what? I fell asleep that night. After I actually fell asleep, when I went to bed, Alabama and Oklahoma were 17-17, and I totally forgot about the charade. I don't even want to call it a fight. And it's like, I just have no need for it. To me, a fight is two guys that are, one's rated 12, one's rated 7. There's no special ring for either one of them, no special gloves. It's 12 rounds. There's none of this baloney that all these shenanigans where they, try to puff it up and sell it as something special. It's not. I'm done with it.
and what's next for Anthony Joshua? He's calling out Fury because that's the only fight he wants. But, Anthony Joshua's not going to be in the sport for long. So it's kind of cash out fight. Not that he doesn't want to win it badly. I don't mean it that way. But, you get fighters like Joshua, mid-30s or whatever, they get to a point in their career where they don't want to fight much. They really
Jack,
don't.
I just thought of something. Okay. Now, here's an example. And I didn't think of it. Someone mentioned it to me. Jake Paul ran and he made it to the 6th round. After watching that, now granted, it was not a prime Joshua, but is there any doubt what a Muhammad Ali or a Larry Holmes would have done to Anthony Joshua? Even if they would have gone around, they would have embarrassed him. It would have been a joke. So these guys can talk about the size and the power. Ali at 223, 225, 217. What would he have done with Anthony Joshua?
Well, the best of Anthony Joshua, he would have dominated, quite easily. But listen, Jake Paul, he was more running than moving. He wasn't moving.
And I said that in song. Jack, I opened the show with that. I don't want to see that.
I mean, Jake Paul was fighting in a way. Like Ali would move around the same way, but he would be jabbing, scoring points, winning.
It was a strategy. It wasn't a survival tactic.
His strategy wasn't to win rounds. It was to survive. And he left the door open to try to win. He threw a few good right hands. And Jake Paul did actually land a couple of punches, did get through actually. But his only hope was to come over the top with the right. And he hits fairly hard with the right, the littler guys though. And figuring maybe Joshua doesn't take that good of a punch. Maybe I could hurt him if I hit him squarely. That was the whole strategy. It was a very smart strategy by Jake Paul, but it turned people off. And he kept falling to the canvas because he felt Joshua's strength, talent, and everything. But as the fight was going on, it wasn't boding well for Joshua because it was going rounds. With every round, he wasn't looking good. But when all is said and done, if I had to give Joshua a grade, I'd give him a B. He got
I couldn't grade him on that, Jack. All I can tell you is this. I'll give him a 12A plus for the fact that he made $90 million and he didn't even break a sweat or breathe heavy.
Yeah, I mean, he couldn't turn down that type of payday, but yeah. But if Josh...
All right, enough, Jack. Let's talk about a real fighter. Terrence Bud Crawford out of nowhere last Tuesday when I think went on his social media and he basically wrote, I have nothing to prove. Legacy lasts forever. I have enough money. I'm never fighting again. Before we get into anything about how good is he, how good was he, where's he ranked, were you surprised by that? And do you think it's a ploy, as some people do, to get more money down the road?
I'm not sure if you could get it, but it was in the cover of Boxing News that same day, a story I wrote about Terrence Crawford. And it was a story that you would say was ludicrous, Frank, if you read it, if you still get a chance to read it, do it, but then again, maybe not, because if he's retired, why read it? And I tried to make a case, as unrealistic as you say it is, but Terence Crawford, if you want to go down in boxing history as the greatest fighter of all time, better than Sugar Ray Robinson, better than Muhammad Ali, better than everyone, I gave him a path, 9 more fights, get to 51-0. But amongst the 9 fights, he would have had to, beat Benavidez at some point at light heavyweight and Bivol. He would have had to move up. Now, it might make no sense. I'm not saying he should have ever done that. But if you want to go all out to chase greatness in the most amazing way imaginable, and then you end your career in your 51st fight, assuming he's on the top of his game with Boots Ennis, then you call it a day, and you'll have everyone like, wow, he just moved up. He beat this guy, that guy. We've never seen anything like him. That was his path. But of course, Frank, if he tried that, more likely than not, someone would have beaten him along the way.
Do you think that he'll fight again? I'm not sure. I think he's one of those guys that if you look at his behavior and his lifestyle, I mean, he's made big money for a while. I mean, not Mayweather money, but he's made big money. And from what I understand, he has a big house, but it's not a palace like something Evander Holyfield had. And I know he has a couple cars, a couple older cars he plays with, but
he owns a number of properties. He said he owns 1 block, a number of
okay.
houses.
So it seems like he's pretty good with his money. And you know what, Jack? I don't know if he needs the limelight. I just know this much. He's a smart guy, and if he's really smart, he'll never fight again. Never fight again.
I know you're going to tell me to shut up, but could you imagine Jake Paul's people are strategizing and they give him an offer of $125 million to come out of retirement for Crawford to fight Jake Paul? Don't you think Terence is going to sit down and seriously consider it?
I mean, Jack, that's the thing about this sport. These guys they fight so hard to get to a level where they make the big money, and then they get there and they kind of want to get out, and then somebody comes along with something crazy, and you sit back and you think, I worked my whole life to get to this spot. How can I walk away from $100 million or 95 or 150? It's like, I'm sure it would be tempting, but I don't think he would do that. I think if he fought again, Jack, it would probably have.
I agree with you. I don't think he's.
Who would bring him out? Bill? I mean, I don't know who would bring him out.
He's not moving up to light heavyweight. But I'm going to say this with Crawford. It's impossible to say what his ultimate legacy is going to be. I just feel going forward, and we're not talking about guys like you and I who are real students of the game, who are hardcore. I don't think he's been on top long enough as a household name who's transcended a sport to be put on the same level in the public perception as Sugar Ray Leonard.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
And now even Oscar De La Hoya is trying to make an argument. A little of it is fair. Some of it isn't fair. He's saying, well, Crawford only beat 2 top guys. It's been more than that. But he points to Errol Spence, and the perception is that Spence was damaged goods. But going into the fight was like a pick'em fight practically. So I don't want to hear it. And Canelo Alvarez, too. He beat Canelo. He beat him with some room to spare. But the perception is going to be that maybe he caught Canelo a little at the end of the line. That's not my perception, but that's going to be, I think, the perception of a lot of people. And they're not, and what are his legacy fights? What's his legacy fight, basically? I think they're going to look at it as Canelo, not Spence.
I think Canelo and Spence will be his 2 legacy fights. But I would say to Oscar, give me your big wins. Who are your big wins? You fought everybody, but who are your big wins? I want to know. Who?
Yeah,
Ike Corte and old Chavez? You lost to Trinidad, even though, I mean, the history says you lost. So who are your big fights? But
yeah.
I don't like when Oscar talks like this, Jack, because
No,
I think he makes himself look
sour
bad.
I'm going to tell you what part of it is. Oscar wanted to promote Crawford at one point. He sat down with him. Crawford didn't go with Oscar. So I think it's kind of sour grapes.
Okay, I can see that.
You know, Oscar might believe it as well. Yeah, I mean, consider this. If Oscar's sitting down, he's thinking, wow, you know, Crawford wasn't as good as Sugar Ray Leonard. He wasn't as good as Tommy Hearns. He wasn't
Well,
as good
Oscar
as Joe
wasn't.
Whitaker. Oscar wasn't. No, you know, but Oscar's talked objectively about himself, it seems, as well. You know, he doesn't elevate himself ahead of these guys for the most part.
I think Oscar, I'm sorry, Jack. I think that Crawford, if he would have fought Oscar, if they met at their best, I think he would have tortured Oscar. I think it would have looked like the Spence fight, maybe even a little bit more one-sided. And Crawford, he would have hurt Manny Pacquiao if they fought.
Yeah, I mean, I would have picked Crawford to beat both of them. But listen, Manny Pacquiao's intriguing. Will we pick him to beat any of the all-time greats of our generation? We wouldn't pick him to beat Sugar Ray Leonard. We wouldn't pick him to beat Tommy Hearns. I mean, and I'll tell you what would be a difficult fight. Will we pick him to beat Wilfred Benitez?
That would be a tough one too.
Benitez at his best probably shuts him down. We would pick him, I guess, to get by guys like Carlos Palomino. You know, maybe on, you know, accumulation of punches. And
Carlos had a good chin. I don't know if he hit hard enough, though, to really get rid of Pacquiao, but it's a competitive fight. It might be like the Cotto fight.
And Pepino Cuevas for the year and a half where he was devastating may have knocked Manny out.
Well, he hit hard enough to knock him out.
Yeah.
But Jack, undefeated, look, and we disagree on this, but when you are undefeated, especially in this new generation, this younger age, it carries a lot of weight. And again, if Rocky Marciano doesn't get the decision over La Starza, we don't talk about him the same way. If Mayweather doesn't get the decision over Castillo the first fight, his career is completely different. It's like, you know, Max Kellerman made a great point. The only thing is, I'll add to it. He said, there's never been a Crawford fight in 42 fights that you watched that you never doubted he was going to win. The only thing I would change that, and I would say, is there's never been a Crawford fight where after the fourth or fifth round, you knew he had to wait that long, but then you knew he wasn't going to win. Because, as you said, he takes it easy early.
I was in Las Vegas for the Sean Porter fight, and I only had Crawford up 5 rounds to 4.
That's how I had it.
And I kept waiting for separation, for Crawford to make a move. But you can imagine what I'm thinking. 9 rounds. We only have 3 rounds left to go.
And Jack, what happened when the corner told him it was close?
And then the 10th round, because Crawford is such a cool customer, he, you know, may have been thinking, okay, I'm up only a round. I'll turn it up a notch and I'll go on a spurt and you know, ended up put so much distance between me or whatever. And it's, yeah. Listen, but you need the legacy fights. Look, a guy like Marvin Hagler was just another guy, just another champion until late in his career when he, you know, fought Tommy Hearns and Ray Leonard. And the Ray Leonard fight should have hurt his legacy. And it worked in reverse. It helped his legacy.
You think so, Jack? I don't think so.
I do. I absolutely do.
No, I think Leonard made him look ordinary.
No. Maybe in your eyes, I'm talking about the public here. Hagler's popularity skyrocketed, and half the people you talk to feel Hagler won the fight. Maybe even more than half. I didn't see it that way. I saw Leonard winning the fight. There's no argument. You don't have to argue with me. You know, we're on the same page. Leonard rightfully got the decision. but there are people out there who feel Hagler was kind of like hard done.
Jack, the thing that gets me is, and as I'm getting older, I come up against it more and I have to refute it. I'm a little tired, getting tired and annoyed of the argument. Well, who'd he beat? He didn't beat anybody. This guy beat that guy, and so forth. First of all, and I've been guilty of this because I've held that against Bob Foster at times. You can only beat who's out there. And Crawford, to his defense, he fought 10 guys who were undefeated in title fights. And Jack, if you go through his record, those guys were never defeated more one-sidedly before they fought him or since they fought him. He was threatened 2 times in his career to lose. Spence and Canelo, and look how he stepped up. And I've always said this about Mayweather. As much as I don't like things about him, I think that we may not have seen the best Mayweather, Jack, because he never tested himself. But all I can tell you is this: Crawford never had a close fight, stepped up, beat 2 boogeymen, and Jack, I think all time. Look, can I put him ahead of maybe Gavilan or Emil Griffith? Maybe not for career, but as far as head-to-head goes, with anybody between 40 and 60, I think he's even money with anybody, and I would put him in the top 20 to 25 all-time greats that I've seen.
Yeah, listen, one of my idols was Emil Griffith. I got to spend, time with him while he was alive.
I love it, Jack. I grew up watching him fight.
Crawford beats Emil Griffith, the 2 of them at their best.
See,
Griffith
now that says a lot that you admit that clean.
Yeah, he was a great.
But you can't compare their records. I mean, look who Griffith fought. He fought Rodriguez 4 times. He fought Bonzone twice, Benvenuti 3 times. I mean, Griffith has the better accomplishments as far as record goes. But if you had to rate them as light welterweights, who would you rate higher?
Yeah, but I see a point too. Griffith nearly beat Monzon in their rematch, and Crawford was not going to be the peak Monzon. Was he going to give him as good a fight as Griffith did that night, that afternoon? I doubt it.
Jack, I have one for you. Think about this, and I've been saying this lately to some guys. You're a trainer and you have a welterweight, okay? Because we're going to say Crawford, we're going to rank him at welterweight. Didn't have enough fights at 54, didn't have enough fights at 68. So let's rank him at welterweight, where I think he had 10 title fights and he stopped everybody. Okay? You have a welterweight and you get a shot to fight Terrence Crawford. Let me ask you this, Jack. What's your strategy? Where's his weakness? What do you tell your fighter? Here's where you can exploit him, because if you can think of one, you're a better man than me, because I can't think of a weakness, or I can't think of something that I would say how to attack him where he's vulnerable.
I thought you were going to ask me one fight if I could have a former champion of welterweight who could exploit Crawford's weakness. And he's not
hold off on that. Give me the strategy and then give me your guy. There's no strategy, Jack. Think of a fighter. Think of all the great fighters that have come along. I can think of a couple guys like Sugar Ray Robinson. There's no strategy.
You tried to set a slow early pace, a very slow early pace, because Crawford is very methodical and he is usually willing to allow the opponent into a slow early pace, like Kell Brook. Kell Brook, I think, maybe won the first 3 rounds against Crawford, and then Crawford knocks him out. But the point is, if you could get off to a lead and just basically hold on the best you can,
But he's not going to let you do that, Jack. He's not going to let you do that.
I'll tell you a fighter who would have given Crawford a ton of problems at welterweight, and no one mentions his name anymore.
Wait a second. Wait. Okay.
Rodriguez.
I was going to, he wasn't my first guess, but you know something? Rodriguez had this style. That's a good call. He had the jab, the feet, the darting in and out. It would have been a little bit hard for Crawford to get a read on him. I agree with that. That's a good one. And I'll give you another one.
Yeah. I think I know.
Now,
which one
I've
you
said this. I believe that Crawford would have defeated every fighter that Sugar Ray Leonard defeated on the night they fought them. Like, I think Crawford that fought Canelo would decision the Hagler that Leonard decisioned. But I'll give you the one guy I don't know who I'd pick. I'm not sure if Crawford beats Duran of Montreal, because that could be the style where Duran has a cast iron chin. He's like a brick. You can't hurt him. He doesn't get tired, and he might overwhelm Crawford with some pressure that if he doesn't get tired down the stretch, maybe he pulls out a decision. But I think that would be a tough fight. That Duran, not Duran every night, that Duran and Louis Rodriguez, that, you think about that, they're almost built the same.
You got to exploit weaknesses in an opponent. I agree with you on Duran. That Duran on Montreal, I actually, for one given night, I would pick that Duran to beat Crawford, because Duran would have come out in a fury. He would have forced Crawford to get out of his comfort zone. And unless Crawford would have knocked that Duran out early, really hurt him.
And it's hard. I can't picture him doing that. I mean, Leonard didn't do it. So that would be a hard fight for Crawford. Yes. But Jack, he's one of the best fighters of my lifetime.
A great welterweight who he would beat would have been Jose Napoles, because Napoles had some problems of movers. So Crawford would have made the adjustment. He would have.
I think Crawford would have stopped him later on.
Well, Napoles cut. So maybe in the later rounds. Yeah, maybe in the later rounds. But, Napoles would have been very dangerous for a round.
I think Hearns gives Crawford trouble early. But I think it would be like the Leonard fight. I think Crawford would have to get him going, and then once he gets inside and hurts him, then it becomes his fight. But I could see him having his hands full for a lot of rounds.
Let me tell you why I said Mayweather, and I'm going to say Crawford as well, would have given Hearns an awful lot of trouble. And I know you've gone on record as claiming it's a virtual mismatch. Mayweather would have no shot against Hearns. Just go to the tape of Benitez.
And watch Benitez.
Benitez and Mayweather and Crawford could fight in the same exact style as Benitez, moving in and out, so on. And Benitez gave Hearns fits. Hearns won a clear decision. It wasn't lopsided. So don't be so sure, Hearns dominates. But Hearns is that. Listen, the Hearns that stopped Pepino Cuevas, you put him in against Crawford. Crawford would have to be very careful for like 6-7 rounds, because
I agree. I was at that fight, Jack. Hearns was a monster.
Oh, there you go. So let's say you at the
Hearns Cuevas fight, because I went to see Tex Cobb fight Shavers, and it was the semi windup.
Cool. Because it's in Detroit. That's what threw me off.
Right.
Okay. So you mean to tell me Hearns was a monster that night, right? Like you said. If he fought the best of Terence Crawford, and Crawford wasn't ultra careful for 6 rounds or so, could you envision Hearns maybe taking Crawford out early?
I mean, Jack, Hearns was one of those guys. I think he's one of the top 5 pound-for-pound punchers ever. So if he catches him right, I think that's a chance. But if you're telling me if you're going to get Hearns from Cuevas and give me Crawford from Spence, I think that Crawford is going to make Hearns miss and clip him and counter him. And I think he could shake him enough where Hearns would go on his bicycle, and then Crawford would walk him down like Leonard did.
Okay, perhaps.
But yeah. I mean, it's a 6-5 fight, Jack. But think about Crawford Hearns. But think about that. And I said this to some other guys too. Jack, you may know this, but you don't know me long enough to know this. I marveled at Sugar Ray Leonard when I watched his career, especially Leonard from, say, mid-78 through Bruce Finch. I marveled at him. If somebody would have said to me, there's going to be a guy that's going to come along in 40 years, 45 years, and he's going to be so good that you're actually not going to be sure who would win if they fought, I would have said, you're crazy. You're crazy. But for me, that day has come. I think Crawford's that good. And if they fought, I think one thing Crawford would have on him, Jack, I actually think Crawford is the physically stronger guy. And I think that would make a difference in the infighting.
And I'm going to tell you, had it been Crawford opposite Sugar Ray Leonard on November 30th, 1979, instead of Benitez, had Crawford been the defending champion, there's a reasonable chance Crawford would have retained the title against Leonard that night.
That wasn't quite peak Leonard, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, Leonard didn't dominate that fight. He had an edge, winning more rounds. But it was nip and tuck, throughout the fight, even though Leonard was up 9 rounds to 5, 10 rounds to 4. I mean, and Benitez couldn't have generated and didn't generate the type of attack that Crawford could have.
And he wasn't busy enough to beat Leonard.
But
he just
Crawford wouldn't have. Crawford would have been busy.
Crawford has the offense, yes. But Jack, think about it. When I said, and I thought about this, if I had to build a fighter to beat Crawford and to come up with, what his weakness is, that's a tall task. And I'm trying to think how many fighters that we can say that about. Like Marvin Hagler, as great as he was, he didn't like to fight as the aggressor. He'd rather you come to him and him counter you. If he has to go tracking you down like he did Duran and like he did Leonard.
No, he was the aggressor against Hearns. No counter punching in the Hearns fight.
And think about that, Jack. That's probably one of the best
I got one for you.
strategic moves.
This is laughable because we were talking about Jake Paul earlier in the show. Had Crawford been in with Jake Paul, he's a much smaller guy than Anthony Joshua. Does he get Paul out?
He would have beat the hell out of him. I don't know if he stops him cold. He would have beat him up bad, though.
No, well, yeah. I mean, he would have gotten, if he hit him enough, he would have disposed of Paul. I don't care weight-wise. He hit enough. Would he have gotten Paul out of there sooner than Joshua?
No.
Could Paul have gotten away with running?
No.
Against Crawford. How long would it have taken Crawford to cut the ring off and to start, basically starting to finish?
Jack, I don't think he would have fought that way. I think he would have tried to lure Paul into coming to him so he could capitalize off a mistake. Because I think Paul's size and physicality, I think Terrence would have thought it's not the best guy to chase.
Oh, let me tell you, before the Paul Joshua fight, I'm doing a story on Teofimo Lopez, and I spoke to him. Coincidentally, he was, about to leave to catch, because he's in Miami, to catch the Joshua Paul show. But he talked to me, and Tio is, he's calm to the point you wonder, like, what the heck? He's not the same arrogant guy from the Lomachenko fight. If I wouldn't know any better, he sounds overconfident, but he can't be overconfident in this fight. But he told me something that was really interesting. He used to spar with Shakur Stevenson, and he said, I know Shakur thinks, he was outboxing me, this and that, but I could tell I was getting to him little by little by little. Because as the rounds were going along and we were sparring, I was starting to hit him more and more. And I could sense a tide turning, he was telling me. But then he said, look, it was 9 years ago, so I don't want to make such a big thing out of it. But he just feels like Shakur is hittable, despite what people say, and that he's going to be able to land punches. He wasn't bragging, but he just feels, he'll be able to reach Shakur Stevenson with his punches.
Jack, Teofimo has to assert himself physically. And the one thing I say about Stevenson that something gets overlooked is, punching power and physical strength are not the same thing. And some guys, take Ali. Ali was not a one-punch knockout guy, but he was very strong physically, where when you hit him, you couldn't move him or you hurt your hand, okay? I think Stevenson, even though he's not a big puncher, I do think he's a strong guy physically. In clinches, when he wants to tie you up, I think he's a little stronger than Steven should know this better than me because he's been in the ring with him. But I think Shakur is a little stronger than he gets credit for, and I think that enables him to box guys. So that to me, that'll be interesting to see if Teofimo can break him down with that and somehow force him to fight from his weakness.
You know, you mentioned something, and this isn't about Ali per se, but the remark, you know, it can't go over my head, and most people agree with you on this. Ali could hit hard with one punch, take guys out. Sonny Liston, one punch he stopped him. Oscar Bonavina, one punch he stopped him. Ron Lyle, one punch turned the whole fight
Turn the
around.
fight, right.
Joe Frazier, he did buzz him pretty badly with one punch in the second fight.
He caught him
So,
with that shot.
He caught him right. He wasn't going to stop Joe, but he buzzed Joe pretty bad, you know, for a moment.
Jack,
And
I told you what Willie Reddish said to myself and Curtis Parker in '79 after Curtis and I got done sparring.
Willie Reddish,
we're sitting,
Sonny Liston's guy.
Right. I'm sorry. Yeah, Liston's trainer. And he said that Sonny said to him that Clay hit a lot harder than people think. He said, and you know, everybody told me before the fight he couldn't punch. He goes, that's not the guy I fought. So, but yet I know guys that know Patterson, and Patterson has said Ali couldn't bust a grape. So I do think everybody's punches
George Foreman was knocked out. You could say he was tired, but the bottom line is, you know, Ali's power did end the fight. As far as Patterson went, Ali did hurt him in the second fight in the 6th round, I believe it was.
He beat him up bad.
Yeah, okay. Listen, and Patterson.
The first fight, Jack, he just stabbed him and tortured him.
Yeah, I could understand Patterson. He was hurt less by Ali than a number of other guys. Certainly, Liston hurt him a lot more. Johansson, Quarry knocked him down a couple of times. And okay.
Speaking about Ali's punch, Ali hit Quarry and hurt him bad with a good right uppercut in the second fight. Right before they stopped it. Remember that uppercut hook?
I think Quarry basically quit at that point. I want to mention, I forgot to mention before, when you were talking about, well, you can only beat what's put in front of you. You shouldn't be judged, you know, otherwise. Look at Vladimir Klitschko. No one rates him top 10 because we hear the same argument. Who did Vladimir Klitschko fight? And it's not his fault. What can he do?
The only thing I would say to that, Jack, is
dominant champion.
The only thing I would say to that is in 10 years, somebody had to be pretty good or have a good night. But, you know, that hurts him a little bit because he didn't always look good in the fights he won. And in some of the fights he lost, he looked pretty shaky. And look, it hurts Bob Foster. Who's his best win at light heavyweight? Dick Tiger, who's a 5'7" middleweight? I mean, really? And then the thing that hurts Foster is
Tiger beat Jose Torres twice. You know, then he beat the #1 contender Roger Rouse at light heavyweight. And then Tiger, after getting stopped by Bob Foster, he scored some good wins. He beat Nino Benvenuti and
in a non-title fight, yes.
Frankie DePaula. He had a heck of a resume, Tiger, when he moved up.
So you're saying that looks good on Foster.
What about Mike? Okay, if we never used this topic debated, if we talked about the most devastating knockouts in boxing history, I'm not sure what order it would be in, but if I said Foster's knockout of Mike Quarry was the most devastating ever, you could disagree, but you certainly couldn't turn to me and say that's ridiculous.
Jack, I've told you before, that's the one time I watched the fight live and I thought I saw a man just get killed. That's how devastating that left hook was.
Mike Quarry had a really good chin on top.
Wasn't a big puncher, but he took a good shot.
Right, and Foster just annihilated him with one blow.
And Foster has some of the best knockouts. I mean, Rondon, Tiger, and Quarry. I mean, that's Hearns level stuff.
Yeah, speaking of knockouts, I hate to bring this topic up because of the amount of respect I have for Rocky Marciano and his come from behind knockout of Jersey Joe Walcott because I think he beat the best version of Jersey Joe. I don't want to hear Jersey Joe is 38. But everyone considers it a one-punch knockout with that great right hand with Walcott was against the ropes. But that left hook to the ear, was it me?
On the way down?
He was sagging on the ropes. If it wasn't for the left hook to the ear, let's say that never landed. I kind of wonder, was it a two-punch knockout?
I don't know, Jack, because Walcott was really hurt, and it must have done something to him because Walcott only fought Marciano for the money in the rematch, and he didn't even give it a good effort. He wanted no part of it.
Oh no, the second fight, no. When you give it all you have, and it's not good enough, Walcott wasn't going to put himself through that again. He said before the first Marciano fight, take my name out of the record books if I can't beat this guy. He didn't think much of Rocky going into the fight. And listen, in the first round, he drops Rocky with a left hook. And then he, laid a beating on him. But Marciano had this great resolve.
Jack, you know what the worst thing that happened to Walcott in that fight? I used to be a fight collector, and I had a VHS copy of that fight, probably going back to the 80s. So I would have guys who would want to copy the fight that never saw it. So a lot of times I'd sit there on certain fights and I'd watch the fight as it was recording. The worst thing that happened to Walcott, Jack, was knocking Marciano down in the first round because it was too easy. And I really think he chased that knockout the entire fight after that, because if you look at the fight, every time Walcott moves and he gives Marciano some movement, he got the better of him. It's when he stopped and planted and said, I can go here and get him. And that's what got him. If he didn't knock him down the first round, he might have beat Marciano by decision.
When you talk about Walcott and knockouts, I said a little while ago, the most devastating knockout was arguably Foster. The most important one-punch knockout in boxing history could have been
knocking Charles out.
Yeah, and it was so classic to watch the way Walcott took a step in. It's like he walked to him, took a step in, and boom. And
was that a hook or an uppercut?
Good question.
Pretty close.
I'm under the impression it was a hook, but yeah, an uppercut to me.
It looked like he came underneath, but it was part of a hook. I've been trying to figure that out for years, Jack, to say specifically what it was. It was a hybrid hook, I guess.
A quick quiz. Which well-known heavyweight in boxing history threw a punch that was a combination of both a hook and an uppercut at the same time when you threw it? It was kind of like in the middle.
The Smash.
There you go. You're
Ruddock.
Smart, Frank. You got that. Razor Ruddock. Yeah.
He had some pretty knockouts. He caught Tyson with a couple of those, but he just never could follow it up.
I was at the Michael Dokes fight at the Garden, April 4th.
Oh, that was a bad knockout.
Oh, man. And I thought Dokes could have been very seriously hurt the way he went out, in that. And
didn't he do that to Bone Crusher Smith, too?
Yeah. And then in the Tyson fight, like I said, he landed some good punches. Tyson's never given credit for the Ruddock win.
Tyson has a chin. You can't get him with one shot. He has a chin. No doubt.
He has a chin, but you have no doubt, Frank, with Terzo, that David Tua would have KO'd Tyson quick.
Yeah, because they would have traded punch for punch, and Tua would have hit him with a lot of shots, not just one. But I also think Tua was the bigger puncher. One shot.
Training Tyson, what would Tyson's path to victory be against Tua?
Jack, that's really tough because Tyson's the better boxer with better hands. But really, for him to have his best shot, Jack, he has to do something he doesn't like to do and he's not good at, and that's to move away some and jab and try to pick his spots. But that's not who he is.
Did he ever fight Tyson in his whole career where he actually boxed, moved? Wasn't coming in, moved side to side, showed he could execute the type of fight we're talking about. I can't recall one.
No. Jack, same thing with Joe Frazier. If you make them back up.
Against Ron Stander. he showed he can, and in the second
A
form,
little bit in the third round, he backed off and jabbed.
right,
But
right. He
Standard was
showed if
pretty
he
cut
had
up by that
to,
time, Jack.
he showed if he absolutely had to, he can change his style, perhaps. But Tyson,
That
it
was
was all
against a beaten up Standard, though, Jack. I don't think if Standard was in his was still fresh, I don't know if he beats him that way. But Jack, swarmers cannot. I've seen two swarmers change in big fights. Duran, when he fought some of the bigger guys, learned how to back up and counter. And Marco Antonio Barrera did that with Muhammad a lot too. Instead of just going to him into his power, he backed off and gave him different looks. And then when Hamed thought it was okay, then Barrera went after him. But it's seldom guys do that.
Yeah, Joe Bergman asked us a while ago, how do you guys see the Inouye fight on the 27th against Picasso? I mean, how do you pick against Inouye at this point?
I'd be lying if I said I saw Picasso fight, but Inouye is a generational talent, and it's like, how do you pick against him? Exactly.
I read about with Picasso, but I haven't seen him fight.
I'll tell you what, Joe. I'll give you Picasso and 10-1 odds. I'll do that.
Well,
Porter was no pushover. You know what? He's right about that too, Jack. And nobody ever stopped Porter too. We were talking about that fight earlier. We both had it 5-4 rounds. And when Bomac said this thing's a little closer, I mean, think about that. There's a guy that was never stopped and really never hurt in that fight. And once Crawford turned it on, he hurt him bad. And I was a big Porter fan. And you know what? I'm glad he retired. Because you know what? I think he's a pretty good analyst. Some of his outfits make me crazy, but I think he's a good analyst.
Who are we talking about? I missed that.
Sean Porter.
Oh, Sean Porter. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's not given like major roles, whatever. But yeah, he's well-liked guy. He was on the ballot.
And Jack, I know we're going back and forth, but here's another thing. Think about this: how much better would Crawford's resume look if he had Danny Garcia and Keith Thurman on it, but they wouldn't fight him? He tried to get them, they wouldn't fight him. What if he has those two wins on there and he stops both of them, which he would have done?
What it is, once Crawford hit the stage, right before he retired, everyone would want to fight him because it meant money to them at that point.
Right.
Before, it just wasn't worth the risk for any of them because they knew no probability they'd get beaten. And the money wasn't off the charts.
Well, Jack, we're almost out of time. So let me wish you and everybody watching, thank you for watching.
Happy Hanukkah.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
Happy Hanukkah.
And Happy New Year to everyone out there.
Do you have any crazy football picks you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I'm sticking with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They will beat the Panthers, the Carolina Panthers, in the final game of the season.
Will that decide who goes to the playoffs?
And then, right, exactly. Unless the Buccaneers lose to the Dolphins, and
that's not going to happen.
Right. As long as they win that game, it doesn't matter what the Panthers do with Seattle, even though the Panthers up a game. Buccaneers then beat the Panthers, and then they go on a run during the playoffs. And they go to the Super Bowl as NFC champs, where they lose to the AFC title.
Who's the best team in the AFC right now?
Jacksonville Jaguars.
Who's the best team in the NFC?
Believe it or not, even though they lost their last game, LA Rams. At this moment.
I think that's the one team, the Eagles, they don't want to see, and they don't want to travel there. But I think the Eagles are going to be the third seed, which means the only way they leave Philly is either to go to Chicago or Seattle. They will beat Chicago in a rematch, and I think because they're experienced, they would beat Seattle too.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of teams are both, but there are a lot of good teams. The playoffs are going to be fun. I mean,
they are. It's been a crazy year.
Yeah, even tonight, I mean, we only have a few seconds. Phillip Rivers is playing, for the Colts. Colts desperately need to beat the 49ers tonight.
I don't think they're going to.
I think they'll find a way to somehow get it done. I don't know why.
I know I'm rooting for the old man, Jack. I want to see. I like Philip Rivers. I do.
Yeah.
I would like to. I would like to see him have success.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Okay, Frank, it was a real pleasure. Happy holidays to everyone out there. And we'll wish you happy holidays next week because it'll be
Thanks.
before New Year's.
Thanks for watching, everybody. See you then.